Off the heels of the Mario Kart 8 DLC, I figured a fresh discussion / review of my experience on the tracks would be apt, and to sort of provide some thoughts on the future of the Booster Course Pass, given how recent they just dropped, and I have some very pleasant stuff to say regarding the DLC. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, the Booster Course Pass has finally begun, Wave 1 is officially released, the Golden Dash and Lucky Cat Cups are playable, with Tour Paris Promenade, 3DS Toad Circuit, N64 Choco Mountain, Wii Coconut Mall, Tour Tokyo Blur, DS Shroom Ridge, GBA Sky Garden, and Tour Ninja Hideaway. Just played through all of them on 200cc in a gameplay video you guys should probably check out. I'm overall having a very pleasant time with the DLC. I'm recording this before the stream I supposedly did the night of March 18th when the DLC dropped, to which I'm gonna play on 150cc with some of you guys. And yeah, not only did I have fun with the DLC, Mario Kart's starting to become spicy and fresh in people's minds again, for the better. So I think the first thing I'll open with is the graphics. I mentioned this in the Booster Course Pass video a month ago. The main issue most were having, even amongst hype and excitement, was the fact these tracks looked ripped straight from Tour, and they were going to look downgraded compared to the base game, not reusing assets from that base game, and safely opting for that cheaper look Tour has, and its more simplistic art style and whatnot. I figured I'd talk about that here, get the critical thing out of the way. I've mentioned I personally think Tour's art style and overall graphics are solid and fine. I still feel that way, but struggle to compete with 8's art style and exquisite detail and whatnot. Here, now that they're out, I can say they're visually solid and good. Not exactly the same sheen and detail like the base game's tracks, and you have some stuff here and there, some trees, some bushes, some mountainsides and textures that are flatter than others, that aren't as drop-dead gorgeous, but they touched up on some assets and textures compared to the original trailer, even by just a little bit with some tracks. They look slightly better than they originally did in that first trailer. Coconut Mall looks slightly better, Paris Promenade looks much better, Sky Garden 2, a lot of these tracks got more details in the foregrounds, some areas for these got better textures, better lighting, more detailed skyboxes and whatnot. They are trying to touch up the courses with some kind of similar detail and level of polish the base game's graphics have. They are still very colorful and very vibrant, and have just enough detail, in my opinion at least, to not feel too jarring or out of place, that it's that much more noticeable and sucking away the immersion. Visually, they look solid and pretty enough. Not the best, but to me, satisfactory and enjoyable enough. Tour Paris Promenade I think encapsulates that the best. I think that's one of the best looking tracks in Wave 1. But before I talk about each individual track, one thing that really surprised me is how they executed the Tour tracks. I'm really pleasantly surprised at how well they structured the Tour tracks in this. Paris Promenade has its base version, and version 3 make up the first 2 laps, and the third lap you go backwards in the layouts like Paris Promenade 2. Tokyo Blur has each version. Tokyo Blur's 1, 2, and 3 make up laps 1, 2, and 3 respectively, so each lap has its own route almost. Like, they're combining multiple versions of some of the Tour tracks and spreading them out per lap, making it to where you're going down a different path each time. Not only do I think this adds a lot more dynamic flair and creativity to these tracks, but this also excites me for how much other Tour tracks in the future will be changed. Like, veterans who've played these tracks in Tour get to experience these tracks in a fresh and dynamic way, while people who've never played these tracks or Tour are essentially playing, to them at least, entirely new and creative tracks. And that fresh feeling, the ripe, sweet, and welcoming return, is the best way I could describe this entire DLC. Not just Wave 1, it's the most apt with the Tour tracks, but you could say that with the whole wave, and it will very likely carry on throughout the rest of the other 5 waves. Like, this is making people talk about Mario Kart 8 again, sharing a lot of clips on Twitter and social media, basking in these courses in HD, racing again. Some of the Tour tracks getting mechanical revamps, providing a new, fresh experience altogether. It's almost like Mario Kart 8 got DLC for the first time back in late 2014 to mid 2015 all over again. Almost like it's a new game. It's not, don't get me wrong, but it's revitalizing that life, that sensation and desire of experiencing proper full Mario Kart tracks in a proper Mario Kart again. It's giving a lot of people a reason to pick up Mario Kart 8 again, it's giving more and new life, it's remastering old tracks, some of which never got remade or remastered in Mario Kart before. Like, there are several reasons for people to pick up this DLC and play these tracks. Now I, and many others, could enjoy these tour tracks in a natural Mario Kart state, in a state much better than how they operate in tour, especially since they're 3 laps as well. That makes such a big difference. Millions of others will enjoy the tour tracks a ton, and the others as well. Millions will get to play older yet popular fan favorite tracks again in HD, like Coconut Mall and Choco Mountain, plenty of which are experiencing all these tracks for the first time through here, which is great. There's a lot of potential in how future tour tracks are going to be altered and changed to match a similar dynamic flair, like Tokyo Blur and Paris Promenade do here. Also interjecting here how godly amazing the remixes are for these tracks. Paris Promenade's remix sounds beautiful, the drums on Ninja Hideaway sound great, Coconut Mall's remix is catchier and more vibrant than the original. They did amazing with Tour Tokyo Blur's remix, 3DS Toad Circuit sounds fantastic, and Choco Mountain, Shroom Ridge, and Sky Garden sound absolutely amazing. They did not slouch whatsoever in the music. It sounds exactly as bombastic and amazing as the base game's music. Makes me excited for future remixes, really anticipating future potential tracks for the other 40 now that we got a taste with Wave 1. Crossing fingers for Maple Treeway, Koopa Cape, all the other games, Rainbow Roads, Wario Coliseum, and Airship Fortress in Delfino Square, just to name a few. And there's just this very warm, fun energy that a lot of us missed, I feel. I think a lot of us were missing this feeling. Like, the DLC is not only very enjoyable for a lot of people, including myself, but it's like people are treating this like it's a new Mario Kart, or at the very least, they're excited and enjoying the DLC to a very similar level like a new Mario Kart was announced. Do you know what I mean? Like, the last time people felt like this was either 2014 to 2015 if you played 8 on Wii U, or 2017 if Deluxe was your first experience with Mario Kart 8. And I think we all missed just getting more tracks, and it helps visually and mechanically in several ways. They did try to deliver in making it a fun, enjoyable, and memorable experience for millions of people. On to the tracks themselves. Tour Paris Promenade, kinda skirted on this one a little bit earlier. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. This was one of the best ones. Again, the way they combine multiple versions in separate laps is very dynamic and cool. The track itself looks nice as well. The road textures and textures in some of the buildings are very crisp and clean. They omitted the thwomps for this track and made it more beginner friendly. It's a pleasant track for sure. Dynamic and fresh, but pleasant and easygoing. 3DS Toad Circuit. First off, the remix blew me away with how bombastic that sounds. Very in line with how Mario Kart Stadium sounds. Jazzy, groovy, really good music. It's the most basic circuit track for Mario Kart 7, but it looks very solid. They touched up the sand and some textures and whatnot. It's probably my least favorite track of Wave 1, but it's a decent circuit course, so there isn't a whole lot to say. The balloon looks nice, the lighting, the skyboxes. It races like what you would expect a circuit track to race like. N64 Choco Mountain, I'm very pleased with. Fan favorite from N64, the remix is very well crafted, very catchy and classic, yet with a modern flair, with the crisp instrumentation. They used the tour version that was remade for this as the basis for the design, and it translates extremely well in 8. The design with the caves layout, and the glide ramp after, and the rest being ripped from the original. Great design, the textures on the cliffside solid, the caves very beautiful with the crystals and lights. The lighting in general is very good, just a very pleasant remaster of an already great recreation. Definitely one of my highlights of this wave. The classic and iconic Coconut Mall. Everyone's going nuts over this making a comeback, and it almost doesn't disappoint whatsoever. People are disappointed the Shy Guys take over the Miis that were in the cars in the parking lot before the finish line. Yeah, why live when Peter Griffin or Brock from Pokemon can't run you over, right? Joking aside, I will miss that. My only nitpick, the escalators are just a flat arrow indicator as opposed to actual escalators. On handheld mode, using the flat texture for those makes sense to spot from far away, it helps. But the escalators in 7 still had arrows but lightly blended into the stairs. It loses a smidget of that immersion with this being a mall because they don't look like escalators anymore. Again, very minor nitpick. This is still Coconut Mall, one of mine and probably most people's favorite track from Wii. I think Maple Treeway is the only other track from Wii that rivals Coconut Mall in iconography and popularity, but it can never be understated how much people love this one. It still has this iconic design and layout, the cars being stationary walls as opposed to hazards that can make you spin out, make this track more beginner friendly as well. It looks solid enough, the lighting is good. They added extra cosmetics and visual stuff that was beta content in Wii that got cut that they're using here instead. The remix is very well made. It's Coconut Mall. You're gonna have a fun time, and I definitely did. Tour Tokyo Blur, similar to Paris Promenade, it's also very dynamic and very well made. Visually, maybe the weakest one in buildings and foreground textures, but the design is very intricate as laps 1, 2, and 3 make up Tokyo Blur 1, 2, and 3 respectively, so every lap is a different route. the thwomps are still there. Fantastic remix, very jazzy and gorgeous, a very fun track, and really hope this becomes a favorite amongst more Mario Kart fans. DS Shroom Ridge, oh, I love what they did with this one. The remix is absolutely amazing, the lighting and foreground details are solid and strong, graphics in general are good and look better than what they showed in the trailer. It's slightly more chaotic than Toad's Turnpike, but that makes it more fun, I feel. They added some guardrails in the last third of the track to make it easier to navigate, but it's still such a blast and fun to drive, with all the turns and constant cars you have to dodge. Definitely prefer this over Toad's Turnpike in 8. Really glad this track's back. GBA Sky Garden, I'm generally pleased with, but also mixed on. They remade this track in Tour, but if you compare the original Sky Garden to this, which is the Tour layout, it's drastically different to the original. A mushroom you bounce on, significantly less shortcuts and off-road, a lot less turns. Its layout is a lot more basic and beginner-friendly than the original Sky Garden. It's almost like a completely different track altogether. In Tour, it miffed me a lot more there because Sky Garden's original track design, being that intricate and varied in shortcuts and paths, is what made it so fun and iconic for Super Circuit, so missing out on that is definitely a bummer, but I think it matches the overall difficulty scale with both cups, so I call it a near completely different track, and specifically for this DLC, in some ways for worse, but also for better in others. I'll elaborate more on that in a bit, but it's still a fun drive, fun to navigate. Visually, it's pretty and nice to look at. I love how the clouds look at the starting line. The lighting's great, road texture's great, airships and the Koopa paratroopers on the side. Again, even when they scaled the difficulty down, it's still fun to drive, at least on 200cc. And lastly, Tour Ninja Hideaway. I can 100% see this track being the new fan favorite of the wave. I mentioned before, this is one of Tour's best tracks with the theming, all the various paths and roads to pick and choose. It's such a fun and creative track, and a ton of people are finally seeing that now that it's attached to a game with over 44 million buyers and players. Visually, better lighting and slightly better textures than in Tour, not bad. Pleasant visually overall. Otherwise, the layout's the exact same as it was in Tour, but when the layout for one of your new tracks from the start is fantastic, there's not a whole lot you really need to alter or change. One of my favorites, and beyond Coconut Mall, I'm getting the sense this is the most popular track of the wave, which is great because Ninja Hideaway's always been an amazing track. It's just a small portion of Mario Kart fans consistently played enough Tour to find out. So yeah, I had a thoroughly pleasant time and enjoyed Wave 1 of the Booster Course Pass a lot. Some minor nitpicks, a few questions of contentions and mixed feelings here and there, but it was a lot of fun, enjoyable, and good visuals on all the tracks in most areas. Even a couple surprises in how the Tour tracks were executed, and they were all just as well designed as originally, and all blended well in these cups under remaster graphics. If I had to rank my least favorite to most favorite tracks of this wave in order, it'd go from 3DS Toad Circuit at the bottom, being a decent circuit course, GBA Sky Garden being a solid and fun track even amidst my mixed feelings on it, having plenty of fun and enjoyment on Wii Coconut Mall, really liking Tour Paris Promenade and the changes it got, loving Tour Ninja Hideaway for re-experiencing a fantastic Tour track that many more can finally appreciate, really loving DS Shroom Ridge and the remaster remix it got, absolutely surprised and loving how Tour Tokyo Blur was restructured and especially remixed, and lastly, adoring N64 Choco Mountain in like every single way. That's my own personal ranking. This wave was very fun. And a few more things before I close out that some people noted. None of these tracks really incorporated anti-gravity, which is 8's whole gimmick, and I do agree there is some missed potential with us not getting anti-gravity in some of these tracks. But at that same time, even when I can agree to an extent, not only do I feel like they're kind of limited on how far they could take that anti-gravity mechanic in the retros, more than the nitros. I mean, most of the retros in the base game hardly used a lot of anti-gravity in the tracks that had them, and rarely made much of an impact or weren't naturally woven into the course's design. N64 Toad's Turnpike, N64 Yoshi's Valley, DS Tick-Tock Clock, or 3DS Neo Bowser City, just to name a few. But with a lot of the retro tracks throughout every Mario Kart, and the Tour tracks even, a lot of their designs are very strong, fun, and iconic, I feel, to where they don't necessarily need to prioritize trying to put anti-gravity in specific tracks, unless the tracks themselves can lend very well to the anti-gravity. Like any of the retro Rainbow Roads, 100% can utilize anti-gravity. DS Rainbow Road's an easy example. GCN Wario Coliseum, Wii Maple Treeway, and DS Waluigi Pinball 2 as more. But most circuit and city tracks like the Tour City tracks, the SNES tracks, or Airship Fortress, when a lot of their designs are very good, and when most base retro tracks in Mario Kart 8 either don't or barely use it at all, I don't think it's that big of a problem, really. And the last thing I'll talk about regarding the future of the DLC, I mentioned in my DLC track predictions video, a potential idea of the DLC following a pattern of scaled difficulty, like how the cups and tracks starting from the mushroom and shell cups get progressively harder with each cup, leading up to the special and lightning cups. I think I was actually onto something there if this pattern continues, because they made a lot of these tracks a lot more beginner friendly. Sky Garden, this lightning cup track in Super Circuit, which is the third cup in that game, is a lot more basic and simple here. Coconut Mall, a flower cup track, lost the cars in the parking lot, hitting drivers over, and are now stationary simple walls. Shroom Ridge has more bumpers over the edges near the end of the track. Paris Promenade got rid of its thwomps. Like, every track is along that Mushroom Cup and Flower Cup level of difficulty, with Ninja Hideaway definitely being the hardest out of the 8. Assuming that is a genuine strategy they're maintaining for the DLC, like with any new Mario Kart, whether you factor data mines and leaks, which could be different or changed at any time or not, at least in track order, I think that could be indicative of what the next courses will be, which will likely hover between the Flower Star and Special Cup levels of difficulty for Wave 2. My only concern out of that potentially coming to fruition is the possibility we're probably going to wait until the Acorn Cup to get Maple Treeway, and I kind of want Maple Treeway now! But that'll be it for this discussion and review. Even with my own worries and concerns regarding the Booster Course Pass, a good chunk of them are trying to be, if not were, rectified. The tracks look great for the most part, and they're all very fun and entertaining to play as well. Definitely worth the purchase if you like any of the Mario Kart games, not just 8, if you need a Mario Kart fix, and I'm definitely looking forward to more future waves of this DLC. Hope you guys also enjoyed this DLC like I did. Talk about it in the comments, let me know how you felt. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the future with more Mario Kart content, with a Deluxe, Wii, and even a little bit of Tour that you likely want to see this weekend. Stay super.
Yo, hey, 妹妹，嘿，我来呀！共和大哈哈呀！拉面，嘿，来面，白根面，共和再见呀！哈哈，拉面，上手面，谢谢。